Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the complete, frankly incredible history of Rolls-Royce, from its very first handshake all the way to its vision for 2026. We are going to explore how a singular pursuit of perfection over more than 120 years ended up creating two vastly different but equally world-renowned legacies.
Right, let's set the scene. Picture this, it's May 4th, 1904, at the Midland Hotel in Manchester. A mutual acquaintance named Henry Edmonds has just arranged a meeting between two men who couldn't be more different. Following a historic test drive, Charles Rolls makes a pretty bold declaration. He calls Royce, quote, the greatest motor engineer in the world. And with that one sentence, the wheels were set in motion for one of the most recognizable brands on the planet.
So, here is our roadmap for the explainer today. 1. The aristocrat and the engineer. 2. The best car ever built. 3. Engines of the world wars. 4. Bankruptcy and the split. 5. The BMW and VW war. And 6. A dual modern legacy.
Let's jump right into part 1, the aristocrat and the engineer, contrasting backgrounds.
To really grasp the foundation of this company, we have to look at the vastly different worlds our two founders actually came from. It's this dynamic that made them so successful. On one hand, you have Frederick Henry Royce. Born into poverty in 1863, left school early, sold newspapers, and literally taught himself engineering. He was making electrical equipment and cranes before building his very own 10-horsepower, two-cylinder car in 1904, simply because he was totally dissatisfied with the early motor cars. Now, in stark contrast, you've got Charles Stewart Rolls. This guy came from the absolute opposite end of society. Educated at Eton and Cambridge, a massive speed enthusiast, and he'd opened one of Britain's first car dealerships in London in 1902 to sell imported luxury vehicles. I mean, they were complete opposites, but they agreed on one absolutely crucial thing. Royce would build the cars and Rolls would sell them, exclusively under the name Rolls-Royce.
Moving on to part 2, the best car ever built, the Golden Age.
Following that initial agreement, the partnership accelerated into motoring history, and things moved incredibly fast. Rolls-Royce Limited was officially incorporated on March 15, 1906, and they launched a groundbreaking new model that exact same year. But just a few years into this massive success, tragedy struck. Charles Rolls, who was a pioneering aviator himself, sadly lost his life in a flying accident in 1910. He was actually the first British victim of an air crash. Yet, despite losing his partner just 6 years in, Royce continued on alone, completely driven by his relentless engineering standards.
Okay, so what about that groundbreaking 1906 model I just mentioned? Well, it was a 6-cylinder, 40-50 horsepower car, and one particularly quiet, silver-painted example earned the legendary nickname Silver Ghost. Within just a year of its launch, the motoring press was literally calling it the best car in the world, and it wasn't just hype. The Silver Ghost remained in production all the way until 1925. It proved nearly unbreakable in grueling long-distance trials. Just imagine that for a second, a car designed in 1906 remaining the absolute standard of the world for nearly 20 years. It firmly established the Grand's reputation for effortless reliability.
Now for part 3, engines of the world wars, the aero engineering shift.
As the First World War began, the British government urgently needed reliable aero engines. This forced a massive pivot for the company, shifting their focus from luxury country roads straight up into the skies. Wartime production completely transformed Rolls-Royce into a major industrial force. Henry Royce designed the Eagle V12, a water-cooled engine that first flew in 1915. Fun fact, 2 of those Eagle engines actually powered the Vickers Vimy that made the very first non-stop transatlantic flight back in 1919. From there, their aviation engineering just skyrocketed, scaling up to power absolutely iconic defense aircraft like the Supermarine Spitfire, the Hawker Hurricane, and the Lancaster bomber.
Now, the engine powering those Spitfires and Hurricanes? That was the legendary Merlin. Henry Royce passed away in 1933, but his final major contribution was the design work that led directly to the Merlin. You could argue his relentless standards literally helped win a war. During this time, they also began developing jet engines alongside Frank Whittle's pioneering work. Post-1945, car production fired back up at their newly expanded Crewe factory, which had actually been enlarged specifically to build more Merlins. So think about this. Under the exact same corporate umbrella, they were simultaneously building the ultimate luxury sedans, like the Silver Wraith and later the Silver Shadow, while also building the ultimate warplane engines.
Which brings us to part 4, bankruptcy and the split, the breaking point. So, despite their massive post-war car success, with the Phantom remaining the ultimate state car for royalty, the intertwining of aviation and automotive engineering eventually reached a devastating breaking point. In the late 1960s, Rolls-Royce was developing the highly advanced RB211 turbofan engine for the Lockheed TriStar. The problem? Development costs just skyrocketed. They went so far beyond estimates that it dragged the entire company down. In February 1971, the unthinkable happened. The company officially collapsed into receivership. They went bankrupt. And this wasn't just a corporate failure, it was a full-blown national industrial crisis for Britain.
The British government had absolutely no choice but to step in and nationalize the business in 1971 just to save it. And this chain of events forced the ultimate split. By 1973, the motor car division was separated entirely and floated as a separate entity called Rolls-Royce Motors. The aero engine business, on the other hand, stayed in public ownership a bit longer, finally being privatized in 1987. So, from 1973 onward, the car and aero engine businesses shared that famous name, but they were on completely separate paths.
Next up, Part 5, the BMW and VW War, the Great Bidding War.
Decades after the split, Vickers, the engineering group that bought the motor car division in 1980, put the business up for sale in 1998. And guys, this sparked one of the most bizarre corporate battles in automotive history. It was a dramatic bidding war between Volkswagen and BMW. Volkswagen managed to buy the historic factory, the Bentley brand, and even got the rights to the famous hood ornament and grille. But, and this is a huge but, BMW somehow outmaneuvered them to acquire the actual rights to the Rolls-Royce name and logo. Talk about an awkward setup. VW basically had a factory, but couldn't use the name, forcing them to build cars under license until the end of 2002. Finally, on January 1, 2003, the Rolls-Royce brand passed fully and completely into the control of BMW.
And that leads us to our final section, Part 6, a dual modern legacy, the Goodwood Renaissance.
Under BMW's wing, a brand new factory and headquarters were built from scratch at Goodwood in West Sussex. This kicked off a massive modern renaissance for the carmaker. They launched an all-new Phantom 7th from a completely clean sheet in 2003, firmly re-establishing themselves as the absolute pinnacle of luxury. And the lineup has expanded beautifully since then. You've got the Ghost, which is a bit more driver-oriented, the Wraith and Dawn coupe and convertible, and in 2018 they shocked the world with the Cullinan, their first-ever SUV, which really brought in their customer base. Today, every car is still extensively hand-finished with near-limitless personalization. Then, in 2023, a real game-changer, the Spectre. They proved that their defining qualities, pure silence and effortless power, translate perfectly to a fully electric vehicle. Demand remains incredibly robust as we head into 2026.
But wait, we absolutely cannot forget the other Rolls-Royce, the completely separate aero business, Rolls-Royce Holdings plc. It is thriving globally as a world leader in civil and defense aero engines, marine propulsion, and power systems. The Trent family of engines power so many of today's wide-body airliners. So honestly, the next time you fly across the ocean, there's a very good chance you are being powered by the other half of this historic legacy. They are investing heavily in the future too, testing sustainable aviation fuel, developing small modular reactors, and advanced defense systems. By the mid-2020s, this massive entity had returned to strong profitability with some very ambitious multi-year plans.
120. Think about that number for a second. Over more than 120 years, two very different men created a legacy from a little 10-horsepower experimental car in Manchester. A legacy that has literally outlasted empires, world wars, and massive technological revolutions. From the Silver Ghost to the Merlin engine that helped defend Britain, all the way to the hand-built electric masterpieces rolling out of Goodwood today. It is truly an incredible story of engineering perfection meeting timeless luxury.
So, as we wrap up this explainer on a name globally synonymous with perfection, we want to hear from you. What's it going to be? Do you prefer the rich, historical charm of the classics or the unbelievable technology of their modern lineup? Let us know your favorite in the comments below. If you enjoyed diving into this history with us, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks so much for joining us and keep learning.